When my husband Mark passed away, I thought I understood grief. I thought I had prepared myself for the silence that would come after a lifetime of laughter, shared dinners, small arguments, and whispered goodnights. But nothing could have prepared me for the weight of that silence. It was crushing, so thick that sometimes I felt as if I couldn't breathe. The days after his funeral blurred into each other. People came and went, dropping off casseroles and flowers, telling me they were sorry. My son Ethan, 22 and trying to be strong, stayed with me for a few days, but soon his college classes and part-time job pulled him back into the rhythm of his own young life. I told him I would be fine. I even smiled when he left. But when the door closed behind him, the smile vanished, and the house grew unbearably quiet again. I filled my time with little things. Folding laundry that didn't really need folding, wiping down counters that were already clean, watching television shows I wasn't even following. Anything to avoid the silence of grief pressing against me. Nights were the hardest. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the old house and feeling the emptiness beside me like a vast, cold canyon. One evening, about 3 months after Mark's passing, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea. The house was dark except for the small lamp in the corner. My hands wrapped tightly around the mug, trying to find warmth in its touch. I hadn't spoken to anyone that day. Not a single person. That realization hit me hard. How quickly a life filled with people could collapse into silence. Then the doorbell rang. It startled me. No one ever came by at that hour. My heart jumped, and for a second, I debated not answering. But curiosity won. I stood, smoothed down my cardigan, and opened the door. Standing there was Ryan, my son's best friend since middle school. He looked older than the last time I had seen him, taller, more mature, but his boyish smile was the same. He held a paper bag filled with groceries. "Hi, Mrs. Carter," he said softly. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. Ethan mentioned you've been having some quiet days. I just wanted to check in." For a moment, I couldn't find words. My throat tightened. No one outside of family had knocked on my door in weeks. Finally, I managed to say, "Ryan, come in." He stepped inside, setting the bag on the counter. Inside were fresh vegetables, a loaf of bread, and even some flowers. He explained he had stopped by the market and thought of me. It was such a small gesture, but in that moment, it felt monumental. We sat at the kitchen table with tea and cookies. At first, I didn't know what to say. But Ryan filled the silence easily, talking about school, his new job, and funny memories of him and Ethan when they were younger. Slowly, I felt myself loosening, the weight of grief lifting just enough for me to laugh when he told a story about the time they tried to build a treehouse and ended up with nothing more than a pile of broken wood. As the evening wore on, Ryan stood to leave. I thanked him, my voice unsteady, because I truly meant it. After he left, the house was still quiet, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet. It wasn't crushing anymore. It felt softer, as if a little light had been let in. Ryan began stopping by more often. Sometimes he brought groceries, other times he helped fix small things around the house. One Saturday, he mended a loose hinge on the kitchen cabinet. Another time, he surprised me by planting flowers in the front yard, saying the house needed a little bit of color. His kindness wasn't grand or dramatic. It was steady, like a candle that burned softly, but never went out. Through those visits, I realized how deeply I had isolated myself. Ryan didn't let me retreat into silence. He asked me questions, drew me into conversation, and made me feel seen again. He reminded me that life, though changed, was still worth engaging in. Ethan noticed the difference too. One evening when he came home for dinner, he looked around at the fresh flowers on the table and the way I carried myself with a little more energy. "Mom, you're doing better," he said gently. I smiled, knowing that he was right, but also knowing it wasn't just better. It was healing, piece by piece, thanks to unexpected kindness. One evening, as Ryan left after fixing the squeaky front door, I stood at the window and watched the sunset. The sky was painted with soft pinks and oranges. For the first time in months, I felt a strange, fragile hope blooming inside me. I realized that sometimes healing doesn't come in grand gestures or through time alone. It comes through people. Through the ones who knock on your door when you least expect it and remind you that you are not forgotten. And in that moment, I whispered a quiet thank you to Mark, to Ethan, and to Ryan for reminding me that even in the deepest silence, life has a way of sending someone to bring light back in.